It was interesting to hear about politics. I was going to say something about politics, and then I decided not to. And it looks like I'm going to anyway. Death and politics. They go together too. We have to die to what we thought was true. We have to die to what we thought was good. We have to die to what we thought was right. We have to let go. So I'm going to talk a little bit about letting go. I've been interested in death for quite a while now, willingly exploring my relationship to the mystery that lies before each one of us in our own time. I think knowing we will die helps us appreciate life a lot more. I know it does for me. And the reason I've been more willing to explore death and even my own death is that every time I get close to an experience of death or close to experiencing a loved one dying, it's been a really positive experience, and I'll talk a little bit about those experiences. Death is a good thing, and paying taxes is a good idea too. Although we might not like that either. But it's something that, yes, death, politics, and paying taxes, right? The truth is, for there to be life, death is necessary. And here is where nature is one of our best teachers. Look outside. After producing seeds of some kind, all the plants are dying back for a long rest. And there's part of me that would like to have that rest as well, for sure. The birds have flown south to warmer climates. And the birds that come to my bird feeder are resilient and strong and beautiful, just beautiful, to remind us of what comes after death. Of course, it is rebirth, is what comes after death. So being able to come to our own death consciously and willingly is a good idea. And it's not that we have lots of time to practice, although some people do actually. Here's a few words from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Do the thing that scares you most. And I've done that several times in my life because freedom lies on the other side of that. Freedom lies on the other side. And talking about death, of course, is one of these things that scare us. And freedom is right on the other side of that, too. There are so many resources about death, and I just want to name a couple. There's a book called The Wild Edge of Sorrow, and if any of these details you want, I will, if you're not taking notes, I'll give them to you later. By Francis Weller, it's a good book. Anderson Cooper, journalist on CNN, talks about his grief at the loss of his father at age 10. And he has a podcast, and for some reason my computer latched onto that, and now I can get all of his podcasts. It's called All There Is. It's just wonderful. He interviews people about death. And there's a book called A Beginner's Guide to the End. All of the facts that you want to know about what to pack. Well, posting about your illness. It felt like a bad acid trip. I'm just leafing through this book. It's a very good book about with information on it. In it. And I have other books. There was a time when I was doing a lot of reading about death. So a few years ago, speaking of practice, a few years ago I decided to practice what it might be like to let go and die. And I lay down on my bed and subsequently realized that people get together and do these kinds of things. Really, they do. I lay down on my bed and relaxed and pretended to let go of everything. And I did. I just felt everything go. I just let go completely. When I got up a little while later, I just felt like completely renewed. It was a happy accident, I guess. It was wonderful. And we know that near-death experiences are pretty common. They're called NDEs. People stop breathing for some reason, from a heart attack or sickness or trauma of some kind, and emerged into expansive wonder and brilliant light with various heart-opening experiences. And many of these experiences are similar to other experiences. And while gathering information, I learned that there's over 1 million people who have had those experiences and written about them. And I know there are many others who have had those experiences and not written about them. I think, I don't know. Is it scary? I don't know. It could be. So, two of my favorite books are Anita Moorjani, who wrote Dying to Be Me, and Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon who had an experience of being sick, who wrote a book called Proof of Heaven. And many stories of other people's experiences can be found on YouTube. There's an international group that meets to share stories and educate people, and the website is called IANDS. Don't ask me what those letters mean. .com, IANDS.com, and there are hundreds of local groups listed on their website, and none of them are in Michigan. But there are certain groups that meet on Zoom. So if you're interested in that. So my husband Larry died while having a stent put in his heart, and after suffering a stroke, a seizure, and 2 heart attacks, in that order, within 10 hours, in December of 2018. At that time, Daleth and I were starting Death Cafe, and I was reading stories about near-death experiences. And eventually and reluctantly, Larry told me about his own near-death experience that occurred at that time, because I imagine either his heart stopped and they put in a stent, or they had to stop his heart while they were putting in the stent. I'm not sure, but his heart stopped. And he told me about traveling down a tunnel toward a bright light, and also about having a life review. After telling me this, he never would talk about it again. It drove me nuts, because I had been reading stories about these things that happened to people, and here it was right in my own house, and I wanted to just pull the information out of him, but it never came. It never came. So 2.5 years later, and 2 other stoppages of his heart, he died for the last time. Alex and I were both present, although not next to him. He was an independent soul. He really was. And I remember coming downstairs and touching his still warm body and feeling peace and relief that his struggle was over. But it was just such a precious time. It was such a beautiful time. It was emotional, it was sad, but it was a treasure. I still feel the treasure of that time of his death. And that connection with my son was really wonderful as well. And remembering how completely present I was at that time. For a few days, I was completely present all the time because I knew something was different. And so I called off my work at that point and stayed home. And that time was really precious. That time was really extraordinary. But I had another experience which was a little different, involving Larry's father when he died. What year was that? In 2004. He was 102 years old. He was surrounded by his caregivers in his assisted living, and they were all feeling sad. They had been working with him for months or years, and they were really, really sad. And I was just sitting a little ways away from his bed, and I realized I wasn't sad, that I was getting happier and happier. The room seemed to me to be filled with angels. It was, and the angels were celebrating. And imagine that. It just, I didn't keep wondering, but I remember wondering at one point, how could such a cranky old man deserve such a celebration? We all deserve a celebration. And there comes a time when we do have to celebrate ourselves too. We need to give a little credit to ourselves and celebrate ourselves too. So, at this time with Larry's dad, as the time that he was dying became a little closer and closer, the whole thing happened within like a couple hours. I just got the feeling that the angels were celebrating a birth. And it never occurred to me before. But it was extraordinary to come to an understanding that as we die to one aspect of life, we are born to another aspect of life. It's a continuation, and it's a celebration. When we are born, the people around us are happy to see us, and that's true when we die. Imagine how we never learn these kinds of things, but if we're lucky, they come to us. This kind of understanding was new to me, but it was very powerful to understand. And I do understand that we eagerly do this over and over again, being born into many lives and to many lives between lives. And one thing I know, that as we are open to sharing our fears about death, and the more open to listening to others, it becomes the way we process our fears. We tell each other our stories, as we have been doing this for tens of thousands of years as human beings. So every first Tuesday of the month, every first Sunday of the month, I get up here and I say, come join us for Death Cafe on Zoom on Tuesday night at 6:30. And that will be true. Mark is our Zoom master on that day. And we get together for an hour and a half and talk about anything about death. It's an hour and a half of confidential conversations about anything about death. A couple months ago, a woman from Barcelona, Spain, joined us. It was kind of exciting. It's always interesting to have people from far away. They have something special to share. And she joined us partly because it was hard for her to find people who were willing to listen to her and to talk with her about her impending death from metastatic breast cancer. It was spreading to the other parts of her body. And so it just made me feel very grateful that we, in our own little way, in our own little group, we could offer something to her. It was pretty special. So our understanding of death as a mystical experience is a good thing, and I believe that can help us let go of the fear. I like to think that when the time comes, I won't be afraid of dying. But as Larry said before he died, I'm not afraid of dying, but then he was anxious. He was anxious. And it's very possible that a bit of struggle at the end is pretty normal. But I think one of the hardest parts of that happening is the sense of loss. Losing everything we have worked so hard to acquire, as well as losing everything we've worked so hard to become. And we are very attached to who we think we are. But it's also very, very important to remember that we are much more. Let me see if I can find something. I wanted to read something here from Dying to Be Me, Anita Moorjani. In the moment that I completely let go of my strong desire to stay alive, I experienced death. And in dying, I realized that it wasn't my time. When I was willing to let go of what I wanted, I received what was truly mine. I've realized that the latter is always the greater gift. She was able to receive what was truly hers. And she is an important teacher that we still have with us on earth. Oh, so here's a few words from Barbara Brodsky and her spiritual voice, Aaron. Make fun of death. We are as dead as it gets, and we are fully aware of this joyous experience. We are with you every time you allow it. We are in every singing bird and in every joyful child. We are in every delicious pulsing in your environment. We are not dead, and neither will you ever be. And that's the end of that quote. It's a challenge and liberating to remember that we do not ever really die. We are timeless and eternal beings. with the gift of humanity. And this is all a gift. So share your stories, share your feelings, and remember that we are much, 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 much more than our stories, much more than our feelings. Be aware. Just watch what you feel, watch what you're thinking. Be present with each other. The greatest gift we can give another person is to be present. And that is all we need to know. And now I really would love it if we had a little time for feedback, because people come along and finish what I didn't say.